Welcome to this final video on connected speech, where we look at 3 more techniques that English speakers use to help their language flow smoothly when they're speaking. And the first technique has to do with the geminates. Now the geminates are our twins. This is where we get a double sound, 2 identical sounds sitting next to each other. For example, black car. Now it's quite hard to say black car smoothly. So what we tend to do is we just say one of those phonemes and we hold it for a little bit longer to indicate that it's actually representing 2 of its kind. So black car becomes black car. This season becomes this season. Now, did you hear how the S was held for a little bit longer? That is important. If you make it too short, it might actually sound like the season, instead of the season. Did you hear that difference? One more for you. Unnatural becomes unnatural. Have a play yourselves and see how you go. Now the second technique that we want to look at is what we call elision. Now elision is very common. It happens in informal speaking. It happens in formal speaking as well, to a lesser extent. You're most likely to find it in informal language. And this is where sounds completely disappear. And we know that contractions are a form of elision. And I know that you're familiar with contractions, where I have becomes I've, cannot becomes can't. In fact, these are so familiar to us that now we have a written convention to help us know or to indicate that something has been elided or removed. We use that helpful apostrophe. But in speaking, there is no apostrophe. The sound just disappears. And there are many, many, many ways in which this happens. We're going to look at 4 examples now of how it happens with vowels that go missing. So I know that you're familiar with all of these words. So I want to just compare the complete version with the elided version, where elision has occurred. General becomes general. Comfortable becomes comfortable. Literature becomes literature. And I know that you've all heard ordinary pronounced as ordinary. So as you can tell, very common, especially with well-known words. So here's a little word cloud. You might want to come back and look at this later and try saying the complete version, and then try saying the elided version, where elision has occurred and the vowel sound has been dropped out. You can probably check many of these in the dictionary too. A lot of dictionaries are actually giving you both versions, so check them out. But what happens with consonants? Well, consonants are always tricky to get our tongue around, and especially when they're clustered, when we have 2 or 3 or even 4 consonant sounds together. It's hard work for the tongue to make all those sounds. So in the middle of clusters, often that middle sound, that middle consonant goes missing. So most people becomes most people. Next door becomes next door. And mashed potatoes become mashed potatoes. Now, if you want to find out a little bit more about elision and get some more examples, why don't you head to Youglish? Youglish is a lovely tool, online tool, that draws from YouTube. So you can type in mashed potatoes, for example, and it will go through the database of videos and find examples where people are saying mashed potatoes. And you can listen to it slowly. You can slow the sound right down so that you can analyze what's really going on. Are they saying mashed potatoes or mashed potatoes? Okay, so that brings us to our third and final technique, which is what we call assimilation. Now, assimilation is actually where sounds change. They don't disappear. They actually change into another sound. And often this is determined by what sounds are around them. Let's shoot to some examples that might help. So the first way is that we might change one sound to become closer to the sound that follows it. An example, 10 biscuits might actually become 10 biscuits, where that N sound actually is made with our lips together. So it sounds really more like an M, because that gets our lips in the right position to say the B of biscuits. And when we're speaking quickly, sometimes that distinction between N and M is so fine it's lost in the speed of things. 10 biscuits becomes 10 biscuits. We can pretend becomes we can pretend. She can bake it becomes she can bake it. And the last one, it's in her handbag becomes it's in her handbag. And here we have both elision and assimilation, where the D of handbag has gone, it's elided, and the N has changed to an M to be close to the B of bag. Have a play yourself. All right, but there's more to assimilation than this. Sometimes the sounds combine together to make a completely new sound. And this is particularly so when we have the D sound and the Y sound, that Y sound. Remember, we write it in phonemic script as a J, but that Y sound, Y, when these two sit next to each other, we often actually change them into a J. D, Y becomes J, becomes J, J, J. Let's look at some examples. Would you like a cup of tea becomes would you like? Would you like a cup of tea? Would ya? Would ya? Would you? Very quickly, would ya? Here's another example. Did you do it becomes did you do it? Now what's happened here is that the ID of did has completely gone, and so it becomes do you, ja, ja. And one more. Did you have a drink becomes have a drink, where the ID has gone of did and the H of have has also gone. So as with the previous one, du becomes ja and ever becomes ever. So interesting. The other thing to note here is once you've taken away the ID of did, our tense has disappeared. So we don't know whether you're saying, do you do it or did you do it? Do you have a drink or did you have a drink? Did you have a drink? Did you do it? Go figure. And the same happens with the unvoiced version. Count your blessings becomes count your blessings. Got you becomes gotcha. And what did you do becomes what you do. And again, notice there's no tense here, so it has to be determined by the context. Okay, so there you have it. Now, particularly assimilation is used in fast colloquial speech. Have a go, try it by yourself at home, but remember it must not affect your ability to be easily understood. So if you're finding that people are struggling to understand you when you're trying to say what they say, slow it down, come back and say it the correct way. It takes many years to get yourself to a position of being able to use assimilation fluently in such a way that you're understood. But I think you should play. Have a go, particularly by yourself. Okay, but remember, it's fast colloquial speech. Don't use this in formal situations, such as an IELTS test. All right, so there you have it. 3 more techniques for connected speech. The Geminates, our twins, where we hold one of them for slightly longer and we let the other one go. Elision, where sounds completely disappear. We might take out an unstressed vowel or a middle consonant, or it might be something else as well. And then finally, assimilation, where those sounds are changed completely. And that's it. So get out there, keep listening to what people say and listen to how they say it. Take it, use it, practice it, and have fun on your pronunciation journey.